What are you doing over there, Andy?
I'm putting my shoe on, Laura.
Well, that's not going to work.
Well, I don't know why, because every morning I come out the door and I put my shoe on and I walk to work and it works just fine. But today, for some reason, it gone.
Well, you're trying to put it on the wrong foot, so...
Ah, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, wise one. Well, shoes are good, though.
Yeah, I enjoy shoes.
I know you do. Would you like to hear a poem that involves them?
I'm sure we'd all like to hear a poem about shoes.
Well, it comes from a lady called Mary T. Lathrop, who wrote it in 1895, and it concerns a certain culture and type of world that has passed. But the line says this. It says, if you want to know a man, walk a mile in his moccasins. And what it's basically saying is that each of us has a story. We're the product of our experiences. And if we're not careful, we can look at other people's stories and judge it according to what we know about the world. And that can go even further, and it can be incredibly negative, because sometimes we can make assumptions about them and even have actions towards them or their people group that can be incredibly negative because we've failed to understand.
At Just Us, we talk a lot about words like the poor, poverty, and injustice. And we're going to challenge some of the assumptions that we make about people who live in those types of situations. We're going to explore new ways of inhabiting those stories and dig a little bit deeper into God's story and what it means to be workers in his project of restoration. And the reason that we're going to do this is because what we believe really impacts our actions. So what we believe about people and their lives and the assumptions that we make about them will determine how we engage in their situation. What I'm talking about here is worldview, and worldview really is a lot like a set of glasses through which we see the world.
Well, these are my glasses, and right now I can see really clearly, but your glasses, Laura,
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, mine are a lot different than yours.
They really are.
Yeah.
The reason why I can see so clearly now is because these lenses are made to a prescription that works for me. They were made by craftspeople, and what they've done is allowed me to see things with crystal clarity. The truth is we all wear glasses. Some of us wear them for real, and some of them are figurative. But these glasses are the lenses that we see the world through. And that can come from our social conditioning. It can come from the way we grew up, the city we grew up in. Where did you grow up, Laura?
I grew up in southern Alberta.
Wow, I grew up in England. Very different perspectives. It can come from the friends we've associated with. It could come from the education we have. It comes from all of the experiences that make us who we are. The thing is, God doesn't actually wear glasses. He sees the world as it was originally intended to be and as it is now. He has perfect 20/20 vision. He doesn't need these things. So what if we could take our glasses off and see the world the way God sees it, the way it was intended to be?
That's a really interesting point. How do you think that your beliefs have impacted your actions?
So let's talk about that. Hey Laura, I noticed earlier you're wearing a pretty stylish retro jumper right there.
Well, it's actually a sweater, but thank you.
No, it's a jumper. I was born and brought up in England, and there's lots of wind and weather and rain, and we wear jumpers all the time, so I know what it is.
Well, where we are now, here in Canada, we call it a sweater. It was actually my dad's sweater in the 70s, but I stole it from him.
Stealing's a crime, you know that, right? So how would you feel if someone stole it from you?
I actually did think that somebody had stolen it from me one time.
Really?
Yeah, I was in Rwanda, and I left my sweater in the breakfast room, and then later in the day, I saw a Rwandan coworker wearing it.
And how did that make you feel? I mean, it's a family heirloom, isn't it? How's that work?
Yeah, I was pretty upset because I thought that she had stolen it from me. But it turns out, from her perspective, it was just an extra sweater in the community. She didn't have one. She was a bit cold, so she put it on. It wasn't stealing at all.
Well, I guess that makes sense in one way because I spent a fair bit of time in Rwanda, as you know, and I know it's a more collective, more communal, more sharing-based culture than we're used to over here, right?
Right, and where I come from in Canada is more individualistic, and so it's not a community sweater, it's mine. And what I learned from that is that social conditioning really impacts the way that we view other people and interpret their actions. Worldview is also social conditioning. We may not always be aware of it, but it determines how we act. The questions that we ask, the problems that we identify, and the solutions that we come up with are all determined by our culture and our worldview, which might be really different from those around us.
Well, that's interesting because when you bring that back to issues of poverty and injustice, that would make sense from the way that we as Westerners try and address those issues.
Yeah, so if you define poverty as a lack of education, you might provide teachers or build schools or something like that to try and fix it.
And because we tend to be fairly materially minded, we might say if poverty is a material lack of things, then we're going to throw resources at it, or we're going to throw money at it to try and fix the problem, right?
Yeah, so our view of poverty is also impacted by our culture. And we're never going to be able to completely shed our culture or our worldview. And there's something really good about that. But as Christians, our desire should be to see the world as God sees it, so to take off our glasses and our moccasins. And when we do that, we begin to see the world through the most truthful of lenses.
Well, that's interesting because so many of the solutions that we try and find to address the issues that we see very much come out of our perspective and our understanding of what poverty is. So I guess what you're saying is if we could really step back and see God's perspective on the whole of history and his perspective on what he's trying to do in the world, maybe our solutions would look very different and do less harm than they currently do. But if that's true, it brings up a lot of questions for us personally, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Based on your background, what are some of your default settings?
And how have those default settings affected your attitudes to issues of poverty and injustice? And what it's basically saying is that there is a worldview that, oh shoot, sorry. It came back and hit me and it put me off.
What is that?
I'll do it one more time.
It's a shutterboard, it's like that.
I don't know what that's
It'll help me.
Tells you when they're editing.
It's because, oh, sorry, I totally messed up. Do I just keep on going? Shoot.
It's all right, it's okay. Sorry,
Oh,
Jeff.
wait.
Create, sorry.
I can just do the intro line.
Yeah.
Southern Alberta, Canada.
Southern Alberta. Yeehaw. No, I can't do that, can I?
No.
No. Okay. So no, or any of that. Okay, all right.
And do I need to shift back and forth too?
Okay, great. Right. So do you want to do it from the start?